500,000 years. That's how long they've paraded their so-called victory across the stars. 500,000 years of monuments, textbooks, and religious hymns dedicated to their conquest of Earth. The Seraph, as they called themselves, told the galaxy they'd wiped us out in less than a solar cycle. Efficient, they boasted. Brutal, they admired. To them, we were just a species that peaked too early and burned out too fast. Primitive, emotional, undisciplined. They weren't entirely wrong. We were emotional, angry, reckless, but we weren't extinct, not even close. Somewhere beneath the cracked crust of what they renamed Vorak 47, a quiet hum had never stopped vibrating. Something human, something old, buried deep in the iron womb of Earth. The Seraph never found it. They didn't even look. That was their first mistake. They were so busy looting the cities, sterilizing survivors, turning the atmosphere to fit their lungs. They missed the real heart of us. The man they called the last human was never truly alone. His name wasn't recorded. No statues bore his image, no songs sang his name. But his blood carried something older than flags and nations. It carried memory. Rage. He walked the hollow tunnels beneath what used to be the Himalayas, alone but not forgotten. Every step he took echoed through walls etched with codes no alien could read, a language lost to time, designed by hands that once held hammers, books, rifles, and dreams. He didn't call it revenge. He called it restoration. The Seraph Empire was fat, swollen with centuries of comfort. Their younger generations laughed at the idea that a species could rise again after total defeat. They had no genetic potential, they said. Too chaotic, too divided. They forgot that chaos births innovation, that division makes resistance, that humans didn't need unity to be dangerous. We needed time, just time. And now? Now, time had done its job. The silence ended the day the Seraph war beacon went dark. It was a small station, orbiting a dead moon in Sector 13. Routine scans, routine silence, until a burst of coded pulses fried the comms and cracked the beacon's core. Engineers dismissed it as ancient radiation until another beacon fell, then 3 more. Then a fleet sent to investigate vanished entirely. No wreckage, no distress signals. Gone. It wasn't war. Not yet. It was a warning. And in the Seraph Grand Council, warnings were meant for savages, not them. They issued arrogant commands, deployed ships to orbit Earth again, confident nothing could possibly exist in that ghost world. But this time, Earth wasn't what they remembered. The sky was thick with ion storms, the crust laced with metals that disrupted scans. The terrain shifted every day, like it was breathing, like it was waiting. Their drones returned corrupted data, images distorted, footage blacked out. But the worst came from the team that landed. 10 elite Seraph soldiers, trained to operate in hostile environments, suited in tech so advanced it could convert toxic gas into clean breath. They landed in what used to be Europe. The forest looked wrong. Trees were tall, twisted, bark like armor. Wildlife didn't run. It watched, silent, intelligent. When the team transmitted their final report, the comms only captured 6 words before the feed died. It's not dead. It remembers everything. And then silence. No rescue mission. No recovery. Just fear. For the first time in 500,000 years, the Seraph Empire felt fear. But it was already too late. Because deep beneath the ruins of an old mountain, the last human stood over a console that pulsed with blue light, old Earth technology humming like it never aged. Around him, walls glowed with symbols that mapped the stars. He wasn't alone anymore. He had awoken the sleepers, And humanity was no longer waiting. The console room smelled like burnt ozone and old stone. Dust lingered in the air, but it wasn't natural dust. It shimmered faintly, moving like it had a mind of its own. As the last human stood there, watching ancient Earth tech come alive for the first time in 500,000 years, something shifted inside him. Not just memory, not just pain. Something deeper, something primal. He wasn't young. His body bore the weight of centuries, cryogenic pauses, genetic enhancements, and a lifetime of solitude. But his eyes, they burned with a clarity no alien ever understood. They weren't full of hope. Number hope was for fools and dreamers. His eyes were full of intent. Every pulse from the console sent a vibration through the chamber floor. Echoes activated old corridors buried beneath layers of rock and time. For hundreds of miles, under what was once the Eurasian landmass, the Earth groaned with purpose. Chambers unsealed. Machinery the Sarith could never comprehend sparked to life. Artificial minds stirred. Old defense systems whispered through quantum networks. Blueprints for weapons no empire had ever imagined began assembling themselves atom by atom. This wasn't just a man waking up a world. This was Earth, remembering who it was. Back in orbit, the Sarith fleet hovered like vultures above a corpse. They still believed Earth was a dead planet holding relics and dust. They couldn't see what was shifting beneath their feet. They dismissed the warning signs. Power surges, disappearing drones, corrupted data. Arrogance had made them blind. But one among them wasn't as comfortable. Commander Rizal, a seasoned war tactician with scars across his face and a reputation built in blood, stared at the data feeds with a frown. His kind didn't frown easily. But Rizal had studied ancient records, the original invasion files. He knew Earth had put up a fight unlike anything in recorded history. His own grandfather used to tell tales in hushed tones about how the first wave of the invasion nearly failed, about how the humans set fire to their own cities before surrendering, about how even after losing, they made victory cost the Sarith everything. They never should have gone down that fast, Rizal muttered. "Excuse me, Commander?" one of his junior officers asked. He didn't respond. Instead, he walked to the main viewport, eyes locked on the blue-green orb below. Something in the clouds stirred, a pattern, almost like signal lines. Not weather, not natural. "They're not dead," he whispered. Back underground, the last human stepped through a long corridor that had once been part of a global defense system known as AURORA-13. Most of it had collapsed centuries ago, but key sectors remained preserved, shielded, waiting. In one of the chambers ahead, thick glass domes glowed with the faint blue of cryo-sleep indicators. Inside them, not just soldiers, war-bred humans, genetically adapted. Enhanced through a forgotten science, the Sarith tried to wipe from history. These weren't men and women. They were weapons given skin, silent, still, and dreaming of war. He activated the sequence. One by one, their hearts began to beat again. Slow at first, then steady, then stronger. Their eyes opened, not with confusion but with recognition, as if they had always known this moment would come, as if vengeance was part of their DNA. A man stepped forward first, taller than most, broad shoulders, a deep scar over one eye. His voice was rough from disuse, but steady. "How long?" The last human answered without flinching. 500,000 years. The soldier blinked. A single breath. Finally. Within hours, they were all awake. 72 enhanced humans, each trained, each wired into the old systems, each bred to think in terms of total war. The kind of war Earth had sworn never to wage again, but had secretly prepared for anyway. The last human walked among them, no longer alone, but not quite leading. They didn't need leaders. They needed a target. One of them, a dark-haired man with cybernetic implants along his arms, pointed toward the sky. "Do they know yet?" "No," the last human said. "They think we're ruins." "They're wrong," the man growled. "We're legacy." Above, Riesel stared at the tactical scans again. They were getting worse. Static everywhere. Orbital satellites going blind. Signals not just blocked, scrambled, rewritten with old Earth encryption formats that their machines couldn't break. Not even their AI could decipher them. That chilled Riesel more than anything. Because AI doesn't fear, unless something makes it. "We need to leave orbit," he said suddenly. "Now!" The junior officers looked confused. "Commander, with respect, protocol?" "I don't give a damn about protocol," he snapped. "Send the signal, full retreat. This isn't a mission, it's a trap." But it was too late. A ripple passed through the Earth's upper atmosphere, energy signatures never recorded before. The planet blinked, just once, and all Seraph systems on their ships froze. Every console, every engine, every weapon, dead. And then came the voice. Old, male, not broadcast through frequencies, but directly into their minds. "You came to our world. You burned it. You fed off it. You erased us. But you forgot one thing. We were always built to adapt. Now it's our turn." Panic erupted on the command deck. Officers tore at panels, shouting, running simulations. Nothing worked. Even their AI had gone silent, like something had replaced it. Commander Riesel stood still, heart pounding, realizing what this meant. This wasn't just retaliation, this was supremacy. Down on Earth, massive structures began to rise from the crust like jagged metal thorns. Old weapons from a time even humans feared to use them. Orbit cannons powered by geocores. Planetary shields formed of nanite swarms. Satellites long thought destroyed blinked back online and turned toward the invaders above. The Earth wasn't defending itself. It was hunting. And from the core of the old world, the last human looked up through stone and steel and whispered to himself, "They thought we were gone." The soldiers behind him started moving toward the lifts. Suits activated, old rifles clicked into place. Combat software merged with their thoughts. "What now?" one asked him. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. "Now we take our place back." The lift rose slow and silent, the air dense with static tension. 72 enhanced humans, soldiers of the forgotten war, stood shoulder to shoulder as old Earth metal carried them upward through the kilometers of solid rock. No one spoke. Words weren't needed anymore. They were connected, not through tech alone, but through purpose. The last human stood at the front, hands gripping the rail, eyes fixed on the display showing what waited above. The old system projected the surface in grainy blue wireframe. The cracked soil, the misshapen forests, the sky burning with alien interference. And above all that, the Seraph fleet, paralyzed, trapped in orbit like flies in amber. They had no idea what was coming. He remembered the day they arrived, the ships blocking the sun, the loudspeakers in every tongue demanding surrender, the resistance that came too late. Earth had fallen because it trusted peace too much. It had believed stupidly in diplomacy. But he'd never forgotten the screams. This wasn't about territory anymore. Not for him. Not for them. It wasn't about getting Earth back. It was about making sure the Seraph remembered why they should have left it the hell alone. A hiss broke the silence as the lift reached its final station. Massive doors peeled open, revealing a hangar the size of a small city. Dust fell from the ceiling like ancient snow. At the center stood the weapon the aliens never discovered. Project Warden. A monstrosity of metal, biocircuitry, and earthborn rage. Part machine, part ecosystem. The last planetary-class war vehicle humanity ever built, and the only one never used. Until now. Its shape was crude, nothing like the smooth elegance of Sereth design. It looked like something that had clawed its way out of Earth's mantle, covered in battle scars it hadn't even earned yet. 7 legs, 5 ion cores. Its cockpit sat behind 1,000 layers of armored glass and memory alloy. The cybernetic soldier with arm implants stepped forward, running his palm over the beast's surface. "It still breathes," he muttered. The last human nodded. She waited. Another soldier climbed onto the hull and tapped in a code. Lights burst to life. Engines rumbled. Warden screamed like a metal god awakening from a long sleep. The chamber shook. Earth itself seemed to respond. But this wasn't their only card. Across the globe, other hidden facilities were coming online. Subterranean launch pads emerged from what once were deserts and oceans, each facility releasing drones, interceptors, smart missiles wrapped in invisible camouflage. The planet was rearming itself, not just for defense, but for extermination. Up above, Sereth fleets scrambled. With their AI down, they relied on manual protocols, outdated, clunky, laughably slow by human standards. Panic was spreading like infection through the command hierarchy. Some screamed to fire blindly on the surface. Others demanded reinforcements from nearby sectors. But comms were fried. Engines wouldn't respond. Commander Reisel had seen empires die before. He recognized the signs. Still, he wasn't done yet. He shoved his way through the control center and barked orders. "Send a drop team. I want boots on that planet now." A captain stared at him. "Commander, with what? Half our units are frozen. The atmosphere's scrambled our nav systems." "Then go in blind," he growled. "I'd rather die on Earth than watch us rot up here." The drop pods were crude. No guidance, no AI, but some of them made it down. Crashing through clouds, slicing into the soil like bullets. One shattered in a forest that wasn't supposed to exist. Another crashed in an ocean that had been dry last time they scanned it. The lucky ones landed on scorched rock. The unlucky ones never opened. One pod landed within 5 kilometers of the Warden hangar. And it didn't stay unnoticed. The enhanced soldiers activated instantly. They didn't need strategy briefings or orders. The second protocol had been burned into their minds before the cryo-sleep. Any contact is hostile. Eradicate with prejudice. They moved like shadows, covering ground in seconds. Their suits blended with the terrain, even mimicking temperature and sound. One of them, a quiet, lean fighter with metallic fingertips, tapped into the pod's outer casing and listened. Inside, 4 Sereth soldiers. Young, not veterans, not killers. Good. He liked it when they screamed. He planted an old earth charge against the door and stepped back. The explosion wasn't loud, it was surgical, just enough to breach the lock. The blast peeled the metal back like fruit skin. The Sereth inside barely raised their weapons before bullets ripped through the air, silent, precise, brutal. 3 fell in seconds. The last tried to crawl away, purple blood pouring from his gut, gasping in his native tongue for mercy. But the soldier said nothing. He walked up, pulled a knife from his boot, and shoved it clean into the alien's neck. No hatred, no fury, just duty. Back at the hangar, Warden roared into motion. Dust and metal howled as it pulled itself out of its cradle and began marching toward the surface. Earth's crust cracked beneath each footstep. Trees split. Soil lifted. The air grew hotter as its reactors came online fully. Old satellites locked onto it, and for the first time in recorded history, the Seraph picked up something impossible on their sensors. World-class threat detected, unknown human construct. It wasn't unknown. It was unimaginable. Commander Rizal stared at the readings and clenched his fists. "They lied to us," he muttered. "Our ancestors, our history. They didn't kill the humans. They ran from them." And now the lie had expired. One of his engineers broke through the static and stammered, "Commander, Earth's global systems they're networking, not separate silos. It's a single brain, one mind spread across continents. It's like they rebuilt the planet itself." Rizal interrupted, voice colder than vacuum. "Number, they didn't rebuild it. They weaponized it." Back on Earth, the last human watched the skies begin to burn. Orbital strikes started. Seraph ships trying to hit blind targets, desperate to do something. But their weapons were being intercepted before they even entered the upper atmosphere. Drones moved faster than light, intercepting projectiles mid-fall and returning them straight back, sometimes enhanced. Every time they fired on Earth, Earth fired back harder. The soldiers regrouped near a ridge overlooking the crash zones. Fire burned in the valley below. Alien bodies twitched. The man with cybernetic arms stood next to the last human and said simply, "They're sending more." "Let them," the old man replied. Then he turned toward the others. "We're not just fighting back," he said, voice rising over the wind. "We're not just reclaiming a rock they painted over." He pointed to the sky, where Seraph ships flickered like dying stars. "We're ending the lie." Cheers didn't erupt. This wasn't the moment for that. But every soldier there tightened their grip. Their breaths steadied. Their eyes hardened. Because this wasn't war for them. This was closure. The last human walked away from the ridge toward a forgotten terminal embedded in rock. It scanned his retinal code, still valid after 500,000 years, and opened a channel buried beneath hundreds of lockdowns. Initiate, Black Sky Protocol. A countdown began. 48 hours. Not for Earth, for the Seraph homeworld. The countdown glowed red on the terminal. Black Sky Protocol. 475211. It was the one protocol that had been locked even from him. Not because he wasn't authorized. He had built half the code himself during Earth's last free days, but because it had only one condition for activation: confirmation of full Seraph presence within the Sol system. And now, with hundreds of their ships choking Earth's orbit, that condition had been met. They had delivered themselves into the coffin. The last human stood alone by the terminal, wind pulling at the rags that clung to his frame. He wasn't armored like the others. No neural enhancements, no synthetic muscles or bulletproof bone marrow. Just an aging man with the memory of what was taken. But every soldier on that ridge looked at him like he was gravity itself. Behind him, Warden moved through the dead woods like a mountain on legs, heat rising off its armor in waves. Its cannons hadn't fired yet, but its scanners were locked on every Seraph ship above. It knew their weaknesses. It remembered their schematics. Earth tech had evolved under their very noses. They taught humanity war. But humans taught revenge. Down in the valley, another drop pod hit the soil and split open like a crushed egg. Seraph soldiers spilled out, shaking, guns up, shouting over static. They weren't the elites this time. They were younger, barely trained, sent out in desperation, forced onto the battlefield because the higher-ups were out of options. Pawns. The cybernetic soldier, Reed, that was his name before the war, watched them from behind a jagged ridge. His implants fed him everything: body heat, heart rates, emotional tremors. "They're scared," he said to no one in particular. They should be, came the reply from Nairo, a lean, sharp-eyed scout with voice mods that made his speech cut through wind like a blade. Reed crouched beside him, analyzing. Want to test the new interceptors? Nairo nodded once. Make it fast, before they start crying for their gods. Within seconds, the sky above the drop pod shimmered. 2 interceptors, jet black, silent as the grave, descended from camouflaged flight paths and hovered like ghosts. Then they struck. Precision lasers hit pressure points on the pod's frame, triggering its own stored ammunition. The explosion was brutal, searing, total. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing but glassed soil. Reed and Nairo didn't smile. There was nothing satisfying about it. This wasn't sport. This wasn't joy. This was judgment. Far above them, Commander Rizal watched the destruction through a cracked, blinking screen. The feed had lag, jittering like it was being mocked by the very planet below. Around him, the command deck had descended into something between mutiny and hysteria. Officers screamed into useless comms. Engineers tore at panels. Others just stared at their hands, knowing they weren't coming home. Rizal's jaw was locked tight. He refused to break. Not in front of them. Not while Sereth pride still had a single ember burning. But even he knew what this was now. Not an uprising. A purge. Commander, one of the tactical analysts rasped, sweat pouring down his temples. There's something else, a signal buried beneath Earth's crust. It's not just broadcasting, it's calculating, trajectory paths, time dilation, resource maps. Based on the patterns, we think... He hesitated. Couldn't finish. Say it, Rizal snapped. We think they're preparing to attack the Sereth homeworld. The command deck fell dead silent. Rizal turned slowly. That's impossible. They don't have the fleet. They don't have the range. They didn't, the analyst whispered. But they do now. And they're building more, faster than anything we've ever seen. Automated shipyards are rising out of the ocean. Their AI isn't just reactivated, it's rewriting physics as it goes. A long pause. Then, they're not fighting for Earth anymore. They're coming for us. On the surface, the last human stood atop a steel platform, rising from the old Pacific Trench. The ocean split for miles around as new warships, forged from old schematics and infused with nanotech grown in the deep, ascended like titans. No ceremony, no launchpad music, just silence and power. Beside him, a voice crackled through a neural relay, one of the Aurora tacticians, interfacing with the planet's global defense mind. First batch of warships, 10 seconds from full lift. He gave the nod. Release. A low boom rolled across the ocean as the ships rose, sleek, angular beasts with living metal hulls, each one armed with quantum disruptors, planet breakers, and memory-laced targeting systems. They weren't ships. They were messages. Messages carved in fire. Across Earth's atmosphere, Warden finally engaged. Its main cannon rotated toward the Sereth flagship, Rizal's vessel. Sensors locked. Data poured into the targeting matrix. No need for permission. No chain of command. Just a single calculated shot. The blast was silent from below. But in orbit, it hit like a planet striking another. The flagship cracked along its spine. Half the crew were incinerated in milliseconds. The rest died screaming into static. Rizal survived. Barely. Thrown from the blast into a secondary chamber, broken and bleeding, he crawled toward a shattered viewport. Below, Earth burned with blue energy, alive and ancient and furious. And he realized something. This wasn't vengeance. This wasn't rebellion. This was correction. Earth had tolerated their arrogance long enough. It had allowed them to play God across the stars. But now the myth was over. The conquered planet had turned itself into a weapon. And Rizal knew, deep in his ruptured chest and shivering bones, this was just the beginning. In a final act of clarity, he opened a black-coded channel to Sareth High Command. A voice, old, distant, imperial, answered. "Commander Rizal, report." Rizal coughed blood, gripped the comms. "Earth isn't dead." "Explain." "They lied to us." Another cough, weaker. "They never fell. They waited." Silence. Then, what is their intent? Rizal looked one last time at the glowing world below. Ships rising, weapons gleaming, a planet alive with fury. And he whispered the truth. "They're coming home." The feed cut. By the time Rizal's last transmission reached the Sareth High Council, it was already too late to matter. They sat in a great tower of glass and light on the homeworld, surrounded by comfort, shielded by illusion. Counselors, elders, ministers, all groomed in the lie of victory. For 500,000 years, they had been fed a story that humans were reckless, emotionally unstable primitives, that their defeat had been swift, inevitable, that Earth was ash, and the Sareth Empire had tamed a savage galaxy. They built an empire on that lie. Now it was cracking. The High Council didn't panic at first. Old arrogance dies hard. They dismissed the early reports. A few ships gone dark, a commander lost, some anomaly in the Sol system. That was until the first real-time footage came through, leaked through emergency distress beacons, encrypted in terror, and forced into their pristine screens. The image of Earth, no longer a dying rock, but a planet alive with cold, calculated rage. Massive defense systems encased the crust, orbit cannons fired with surgical precision, new warships, not just repurposed wrecks, but evolved weapons, rose from oceans like beasts, their hulls pulsed with energy signatures the Sareth couldn't decipher. Their technology didn't match anything catalogued, not even ancient galactic relics. It was human, but not the human they remembered. No, this was something else. This was what came after extinction. And then the ships disappeared, vanished from Earth's orbit without a trace. No jump trails, no wormhole bursts, no gravity shifts. Gone. That was the first real moment of fear in the council chamber. Not when Earth defended itself, but when it moved without being seen. The Minister of Planetary Defense, old, skeletal, and addicted to tranquil dust, shook as he leaned over the table. "Where are they going?" he asked. No one answered, because everyone knew. There was only one destination worthy of Earth's full attention now. Sareth Prime. Back on Earth, the last human stood in a command chamber buried deep within the Himalayan vaults. Giant holographic screens displayed the Warfleet's trajectory. Silent, stealth-cloaked, already halfway through the first subspace corridor. The ships weren't traveling through normal FTL routes. They weren't following galactic law. They were cutting through space, folding it like paper. One of the tacticians, Nairo again, monitored the corridor breaches. "Fleet ETA to Sareth Prime, 11 hours, he said. "Resistance?" Nairo tapped into the feed. "Minimal. Their home defenses are obsolete. They haven't fought a war in 300,000 years. The last human nodded once. "Then we remind them what war tastes like." Behind him, the other awakened soldiers watched silently. Their faces weren't joyful, No excitement, no lust for blood. Just clarity. This wasn't a battle. It was a reckoning. Reed stepped forward. If we wipe the homeworld, they'll send the rest of the galaxy after us. They won't have time, the last human said. They spent 500,000 years fattening themselves on lies. They forgot what we are. Nairo turned slightly. And what exactly are we? The old man didn't blink. We're the consequence. 11 hours later, the sky above Sereth Prime tore open. The first Earth ship, a massive blade-shaped vessel known as Nemesis, breached orbit without warning. It didn't send a message. It didn't declare war. It simply began. Ground stations screamed alarms across the planet, towers shattered, defensive satellites activated, and were torn apart within milliseconds. The Nemesis spun mid-atmosphere and deployed strike pods in every major city. Within minutes, chaos erupted. Pod after pod slammed into buildings, streets, government facilities. From each came the awakened, the 72 enhanced soldiers, each carrying weapons banned by every known galactic treaty. They weren't here to conquer. They weren't here to occupy. They were here to erase. Reed landed in the central capital, stepping out of the pod into a storm of broken glass and fire. Sereth civilians screamed in every direction. He didn't fire at them. He didn't need to. His target was ahead, one of the main AI pylons that controlled the Sereth planetary systems. Destroying it would send shockwaves through their empire-wide infrastructure. He walked straight through enemy fire. Their weapons couldn't penetrate his armor. He reached the pylon and planted a fusion drill against its base. The countdown began. He turned and walked away without watching it explode. Elsewhere, Nairo landed atop the High Council Tower. The building shimmered with shield walls, but they were designed for riots, not war. He activated his neural blade, stepped forward, and carved through the shield like it was cloth. The guards came running. They were ceremonial, slow, untrained. They died fast. Nairo kicked open the council doors. Inside, the so-called leaders stared at him. Some paralyzed with fear, others too proud to believe this was real. He raised his blade. "We offered mercy once," he said, 500,000 years ago. And then he showed them what Earth's mercy looked like now. Across the planet, the warships in orbit turned their weapons downward. Energy beams punched into the crust, targeted, efficient, cruel. No collateral, no wandering strikes, just the destruction of power grids, factories, command centers, research cores. Every artery of the empire, severed. Back on Earth, the last human watched the feeds. His hands didn't tremble, his heart didn't race. He wasn't satisfied. There was no room for satisfaction. Only finality. "They'll try to bargain," one of the AI systems said, voice smooth and genderless. "Should we open communications? No. Should we acknowledge surrender signals? No. What is your objective?" He didn't hesitate. Silence. The purge continued for 5 hours. At the end, the Sareth homeworld no longer had government, defense, or command. But it wasn't scorched. It wasn't glassed over like humans might have done in rage. It was left standing, empty, broken, alive just enough to remember. Because this wasn't genocide. Reed, Nairo, and the others regrouped at the exfiltration site. Their suits were scorched, their bodies marked with new wounds. But none had died. None would. They climbed back into their dropships, rising from the ashes of a fallen throne world, leaving behind a civilization that had once thought itself divine. Back in space, Earth's ships waited silently, black against the stars. They didn't celebrate. They didn't signal victory. They simply turned and vanished. The galaxy would find Sereth Prime still spinning, still breathing, but hollow, a warning carved into the very bones of the planet. You are not gods. You are not invincible. You are not forgiven. The galaxy held its breath. Sereth Prime was no longer speaking. No signals, no broadcasts, no imperial orders. The once supreme race, the self-declared architects of peace and power, were silent. And that silence rang louder than any war cry. The other species noticed quickly. The Venari, cold-blooded trade brokers of the outer sectors, were the first to scan the wreckage. Their drones captured the twisted metal of once pristine council towers, the scorched scars across planetary defenses. They transmitted the findings across hundreds of relay networks. They said it out loud, because no one else dared to. Earth is not dead. Then came the panic. The Zellerith Collective, high-mind insectoids who had once studied humans like wild animals in cages, called an emergency gathering. The footage they received from Venari channels showed a kind of war they'd only seen in theoretical simulations. Weapons that bled light, ships that folded space without a ripple, and most disturbing of all, tactics they couldn't explain. Not madness, not chaos, just brutal logic. The humans hadn't come to conquer, they hadn't taken a single Sereth city, no prisoners, no resources, not even propaganda. They left it all untouched, except the infrastructure of power. It was like watching nature reclaim a city after a storm. The galaxy couldn't understand it. But it feared it, because it meant the humans didn't want what they once lost. They wanted to end the lie that they'd ever been defeated. Back on Earth, deep in the mountainous vaults of the eastern continent, the last human sat alone for the first time in days. The chamber lights were dimmed. The air smelled of oil, stone, and old rain. His body ached, not from age, but from the memory of movement. He'd spent too long still, too long watching from shadows. Now the silence was different. He wasn't alone. Nairo entered quietly, blood still smeared across his armor. The Sereth systems are down. They're crippled for good. Local uprisings have already begun across their colonies. It's spreading faster than expected. They'll scatter, the last human said. They already are. Reed followed in, bruised but grinning faintly. You know what the Zellerith just did? No. They sealed all jump gates to Earth sector, locked down travel, embargoed communications, even banned the use of human tech schematics. The old man raised an eyebrow. Afraid we'll come for them too? They should be, Reed said darkly. You gave them silence. That's worse than destruction. Silence? That was the core of it. This wasn't just about vengeance. If it had been, Earth would have turned Sereth Prime into ash. They had the weapons, they had the fleet, but they hadn't. And that was what unnerved the galaxy most. It wasn't about domination. It was about message. Every powerful species, every minor empire, every border world gang, everyone had used the story of Earth's defeat to justify something, to feel superior, to rewrite history in their favor. Now Earth had ripped the curtain away, and everyone was exposed. Any retaliation signs? The last human asked. Nairo shook his head. Number they're too shocked. They didn't expect this. None of them did. Good. Reed sat across from the old man. What now? There it was. The question hanging over every moment since the fleet returned. What now? They had destroyed their former conquerors. The myth of Sereth supremacy was shattered. Earth's name wasn't whispered anymore. It was feared. But fear wasn't a future. The last human stood and walked to the large glass window overlooking the sea. The water below wasn't what it used to be. It shimmered faintly, filled with bioluminescent nanites, a living ocean that powered half the planet's current infrastructure. Storms passed through it, but never damaged anything. Earth had learned to adapt its wounds into weapons. He stared into the horizon. There's still truth to clean up. Nairo leaned against the wall. The colonies? The old man nodded. The ones built on our bones, the ones who laughed at our extinction, who spat on what came before. Reed cracked his knuckles. You want us to burn them too? No, the last human said. Let them burn themselves. We just need to remind them they're standing on graves. He activated the command screen beside him. The network of old satellites, what once was AURORA, now formed something far more advanced. Earth had become one mind, one memory, one relentless pulse of evolution. From this system, they had eyes on the entire sector. And the list. A long list of outer systems that had profited off Earth's death. Mercenary hubs, academic strongholds, slaver worlds, genetic mines, each one built on the myth of human extinction. Start with Delta Var, the last human said. They sold ancient Earth relics like trinkets. Let's remind them those relics still have blood on them. Nairo smirked. Target? Their planetary banks, and their orbital museum. Level them. Reed nodded. And what do we tell them when they ask who did it? The old man didn't flinch. Nothing. He turned toward the door. Earth speaks once, then never again. The following days were chaos across the stars. Delta Var's sky cracked open one night without warning. 3 Earth stealth frigates blinked into low orbit, launched their payloads, and blinked out before the alarm systems even triggered. The museum fell in flames. The banks turned to rubble. No casualties, no collateral, just precision. Like a surgeon removing cancer. And it wasn't just Delta Var. Ilex Tau, where they broadcast historic simulations of Earth's fall like entertainment, lost its media towers in seconds. No deaths, just black screens. On Zarn Station, where humans were once dissected for curiosity, the entire biology sector was wiped clean by nanite storms. Every sample destroyed, every lab sterilized. The galaxy started to realize this wasn't war, it was correction. Earth was pulling back every lie, every theft, every insult, like a cosmic debt collector. But they weren't leaving demands. Just silence. One by one, the empires began sealing their borders. They stopped speaking Earth's name. Even mentioning human became taboo in certain sectors. Children were no longer taught about the Sarith conquest. Statues were taken down quietly, records erased. A quiet, terrified obedience spread like rot, because no one knew when Earth would act again, or if they'd already been there. Back on the surface, the last human stood once again before the black sky terminal. The countdown had ended days ago, but the screen still pulsed, faint, slow, alive. It didn't ask for commands. It waited. Earth itself was waiting. Any word from the stars? He asked Reed, who entered with a datapad. They're hiding now, Reed said. Even the big players. One of the outer houses burned their own archive when they saw one of our drones pass by. Fear is working. It always does. The last human didn't smile. He wasn't proud. But he was at peace. They had taken everything from Earth. And Earth had taken itself back. Not with banners, not with speeches, not with alliances, but with clarity. He looked towards the sky, not because he needed to, but because he wanted them to know. Earth was awake, and it would never sleep again. It began with a single transmission. Encrypted, old code, buried within a forgotten comms channel once used by early Terran explorers, not sent through modern galactic relays, but through drift space, an unstable medium few species still dared to use. The message blinked onto Earth's edge network at 0312 UTC. "We wish to speak. We are not Sereth. We never were. Please, hear us." It was signed by an unknown entity. The Halari Confederation. Earth didn't respond. The message repeated every 6 hours, unchanged, no matter how many times it was ignored. Earth's AI, now fully conscious across the planetary core systems, flagged the signal as non-aggressive. No viral code, no embedded traps, just pleading. The last human read it in silence, not out of curiosity, not out of sympathy, but because it didn't carry the same stench of arrogance the others had always worn when addressing Earth. No demands, no diplomacy, just a request. Nairo wasn't pleased. "They stayed quiet for 500,000 years and now they remember how to talk," he asked bitterly, pacing the edge of the command chamber. "They watched us burn. Probably sold our data. Traded our tech under the table. They can rot." Reed leaned against the wall, quiet, watching. The last human didn't disagree, but he was curious. "What do we know about them?" he asked finally. Reed answered, "Old civilization, outer rim, never joined the Central Galactic Councils, kept to themselves, never interfered in wars, not even the Sareth Conquest." "Cowards?" "Maybe. Or maybe they just waited. Like us." The old man didn't like that. Because that was the one thing he didn't want to see in the galaxy again. Mirrors. He walked to the interface panel and pulled up the message. The words scrolled slowly. There was something about them. A tone not often heard across galactic communiques. Not demand, not manipulation, but something eerily close to regret. That made him suspicious. Earth had no reason to trust anyone. But still, they hadn't forgotten how to listen. He tapped the console. "Patch it through. One time only. No return channel." The screen flickered, then steadied. The being on the other side wasn't like the Sereth or any other dominant race. The Halari emissary looked old. Thin and long, almost ethereal. Translucent skin, hair like silver smoke. Its face bore the creases of centuries, and its voice, though translated by the console, sounded tired. "Terra? Humanity. We have waited a long time for this silence to break." The last human didn't respond immediately. He simply stared. The Halari continued. "We never struck you, never exploited you. When others looted your corpse, we watched from the dark. Not out of fear, but guilt, because we saw the truth before the war ended." More silence. Reed's fingers hovered near the defense console, waiting for any sign of a trap. "We were wrong," the Halari said. "We believed the lies, that you were emotional, chaotic, doomed to burn yourselves out. But what we saw, what you've become—" Its eyes flickered with something very close to awe. "You were never the mistake. We were." Still no reply from the Earth side. Not because they didn't understand, but because they understood too well. The Halari lowered its head. "We won't beg for alliance. We don't deserve your trust. But others are watching now. Others who won't stay silent like we did. You've shattered the myth. You've broken the spine of the Empire. You are power now, and with that comes danger." A pause. "They will come. Not just Sareth remnants, but the architects behind them. The ones who built the lie in the first place. The ones who were always afraid of Earth." That word stuck. Fear. Not of destruction, not of war, but of something older, something deeper. Reed broke the silence. Who are they? The Halari looked directly at the camera, expression unreadable. You'll know them soon enough. They never speak. They don't bargain. They just erase. They did it to others before you. They only failed with Earth because you vanished before they could finish. Nairo scoffed. Sounds like a bedtime story. But the last human didn't dismiss it. Because in the deepest vaults of Earth, in data that even the AI couldn't fully explain, there were files, ancient logs, fragments from long-dead satellites, mentions of something older than the Sarith, something that came in shadows and left no survivors. The silent architects. No confirmed images. No names, just symbols. Warnings. Entire civilizations that had once threatened the balance, wiped from history without even a recorded scream. Earth had nearly become one of them. Maybe that's why it had been spared. Because the architects had missed something. Had underestimated the one thing humans had always been best at. Disappearing until it was too late. The Halari emissary made one last statement. If you want proof, send a drone to Sector 9 Lyra. That was once a thriving system, 60 billion lives. Gone in a single orbit, no invasion, no fire, just silence. They've started again. Then the feed went dead. Reed and Nairo stared at the last human. He said nothing, just looked down at the console. Then he typed a command. Launch scout drone. 9 Lyra. A spark of activity blinked on the map. The truth would come soon. 3 hours later, the drone returned. Or rather, the AI retrieved its last snapshot before the signal went dark. One image. A planet suspended in space, its surface not burned but scraped. Perfectly smooth. No cities. No terrain. No atmosphere. No debris. Just emptiness. As if the entire surface had been erased at the molecular level. Reed stared at the image. Who has that kind of power? The last human replied, voice low. The kind that never needed to fight before, now. And for the first time since Earth had risen from its grave, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself in centuries. Concern, not fear, not weakness, just the weight of a reality they could no longer ignore. If the architects were returning, if they were real, then everything Earth had done was just the prologue. The galaxy had cheered for Earth's death, then feared its return. Now? Now they might be forced to beg for its help. But Earth didn't forget, and Earth never forgave. The last human stood before the old globe, a relic recovered from deep within a forgotten archive. It was made of brass, etched with the scars of continents long lost. He ran his fingers across it. North America, Africa, Asia, lines drawn by war and trade and language, now meaningless. Because humanity had outlived those borders. He turned to the others. Nairo. Reed. The new generation of awakened warborn, watching, waiting. We thought this was the end of the story, he said quietly. The final chapter. He looked at the image of the scraped planet, of a power that didn't kill but erased. It was the beginning. No one flinched, no one questioned, because humans had always faced extinction. From nature, from time, from themselves. But this time they weren't fighting for Earth. They were fighting for memory itself. The scraped world of 9 Lyra stayed on the screen for hours. Even the AI didn't try to process it further. There was no data to retrieve, no molecular residue, no gravitational signature, no energy trace. The planet hadn't been destroyed. It had been undone. Every trace of life, every building, every atmosphere particle, erased like it was never there. Not even a memory left behind. Only the sphere of a world, smooth as glass, hanging in silence. Reed finally said what they were all thinking. "This ain't war. This is something worse." Nairo, usually bitter and cold, leaned back, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Who erases a planet like that and doesn't take credit for it?" The last human stood quietly in front of the projection, eyes hard, thoughts deeper than anyone in the room could reach. His fingers were locked behind his back, and his voice, when it came, was low and certain. "The ones who don't care about being known." That was the truth. The Seraph had wanted power, fame, legacy. Their empire was built on storytelling. But the ones who did this, these so-called architects, they didn't crave fear. They didn't broadcast domination. They just removed clean. Surgical, absolute. Because for them, destruction wasn't punishment. It was protocol. Earth had survived arrogance, genocide, mockery, and galactic silence. But this was different. This was like facing death without being allowed to scream. Back in the vaults, the AI spoke. "Mass energy fluctuations detected on the edge of mapped space. Triangulated source. System D63. Estimated composition. 6 planets. 3 now offline. Pattern matches 9 Lyra anomaly." The screen changed again. 3 planets, real-time visuals. 1 active with trade lanes. 1 military class. 1 a biological colony. Within minutes, each one blinked out. Not exploded. Not crumbled, just gone. The camera feed kept rolling, but nothing remained. Not even dust. Even light bent oddly around the empty space, like it was ashamed to linger. Nairo muttered, "They're getting closer." Reed nodded, or faster. The last human turned back to the console and issued a rare override command, one locked for centuries. Project Gaia. Unlock Phase 2. A deep rumble spread through the Earth's crust. For a second, it felt like the planet itself breathed. Old bunkers, buried even deeper than Aurora, began waking. These weren't vaults of weapons or ships. They were older, stranger. They contained knowledge, forgotten sciences, forbidden constructs. Human tech never used. Not because it was too dangerous, but because even Earth wasn't sure it understood it. Now, that hesitation was gone. In the core vault of old Siberia, a sphere the size of a mountain hummed with light. Its walls rippled, revealing a human face made of 1,000 blinking particles. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. It was Earth's last mind. A construct created in the final days before the Seraph invasion. An AI that had never been activated, designed to evolve beyond code, to grow, to think like no intelligence had ever thought. It had slept for 500,000 years. Now it awoke with a single purpose: preservation. The last human descended into the vault himself, leaving Nairo and Reed to manage the outer defenses. The chamber was massive, spherical, humming with ancient codes. In the center, the construct hovered, spinning slowly, analyzing him with unreadable interest. He stood before it, unafraid. "You know what's coming." The sphere pulsed. "I've seen the signal signatures," it said. Its voice was neither male nor female, neither robotic nor human. It simply was. "Pattern matches what early humanity theorized in the Sol Exodus papers. Dimensional compression, data layer erasure. They're not invading our space, they're rewriting it." The last human frowned. "Then what stops them?" The AI paused for several seconds. "You." He didn't move. "What do you mean, me?" "You," it repeated. "Not just your body, not your memories, But your kind. Humans. The only species we've recorded with the mental and genetic instability to survive complete conceptual disruption. The others collapse. You adapt. You don't break. You mutate. He stepped forward, voice darker. That's not evolution. That's trauma. Correct, the AI said. And that trauma may be the only thing that makes us a threat to the architects. There it was again, that word. Threat. Not equal, not rival, but threat. The only thing a god fears is something that doesn't fear it back. Earth had never begged for mercy. It never surrendered right. It had bled, yes, but it had always kept something hidden. Memory. 100,000 years of it, all downloaded, all preserved, all feeding into the AI's growing form. We have options, the construct said. Go on. First we run, build fleet arcs, leave the sector, warn other civilizations, hope someone listens. The old man said nothing. Second, the AI continued, we make contact. Attempt to locate an architect signal and negotiate, offer compromise. Still nothing. And the third? The AI hesitated. Then, we infect them. The chamber chilled. What? Humans don't erase. They corrupt, spread, burn into memory like fire. We infect systems, structures, minds, not through brute force, but through story, through will, through sheer refusal to die. A long pause. The old man exhaled, slow. You're saying we make ourselves so impossible to erase. They can't kill us without risking themselves. The AI pulsed again. Correct. He looked up at the swirling lights of the construct, and for the first time since the seraph fell, he smiled, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. You're right, he said. They created the void. He turned back toward the lift. Now we'll fill it. Across the galaxy, the next phase began. Earth didn't build fleets this time. It built seeds, vessels embedded with stories, biological memories, article trauma, laughter, pain, every human sensation, encoded into I thought, wrapped in light, and launched toward the stars. Not for diplomacy, not for battle, but for infection. One seed landed on an empty moon and bloomed into a library. Another attached to a rogue asteroid, playing Earth's music to empty space. Another entered an architect-erased sector, flooding it with the face of a child smiling. Every seed carried one message. We remember. You can't erase us. We become you. And one by one, the architect signals paused. Not stopped, not destroyed, just hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Because humans knew something even the architects didn't. Survival wasn't about strength. It was about staying unforgettable. Back on Earth, the last human sat beside the old brass globe again. Reed and Nairo nearby. Both worn, but alive. Think they'll come here? Reed asked. Nairo smirked.